If you've wanted to add a ruffle to one of your garments and ever question, well, just how long exactly should I cut this darn thing? Let me walk you through it and give you a bunch of examples. I'm Madi with Madi Sews, and we're going to be talking about ruffles here today. So one of the things that I constantly get asked about is if I want to add a ruffle to any of my garments, say I want to add it to the bottom of one of my dresses, or in this case, if I want to add it to the bottom of this tiny little kid's dress, how long do I need to cut that piece to actually get a pretty nice ruffle? And honestly, the answer really kind of varies because it depends on how much volume you like in a ruffle. And I actually have a couple of different examples to show you. So on this dress, you can see here that there's a ruffle, but it's kind of lightly gathered, right? So it does have that like fun little flirty ruffle look, but it's not very pronounced. Now compare that to this one, and there's a definite difference in these two ruffles. There's even a middle ground, right? So let's talk about some of the different measurements that you can use to get these different looks, and then I'm going to give you a trick on how to make hand-gathered stitches a little easier towards the end of this video. The first thing that you're going to need to know is how long is the actual piece that you want to attach a ruffle to. Now, make sure that you're taking the front and the back into consideration, because if you're only cutting half that ruffle, it's not gonna be a ruffle. This dress right here is actually the A-line dress that Thoughtful Creativity made for ProjectDressAGirl, and the circumference all the way around this dress is 32 inches long. When you make this dress as drafted, you end up with a nice amount of ruffled fabric down here at the bottom. You're cutting out a rectangle that's a little more than 2 times the width of this bottom piece right here. And actually, it's 2 1/4 times, so 2.25 times 32 is what you're going to end up for a nice amount of gathered ruffles like that. And if you're sitting here like, what is 2.25 times 32? Just use a calculator. No one's gonna know. Now, I like to mess around with how much ruffle play is on my dresses, depending on just how much fabric I have. So for this dress, for example, this is the one with the slightly gathered ruffles. I didn't have the total length to cut this rectangle out. So what I did was 1.5 times the 32 inches, which is a circumference here. And it gave me this nicely, I'd call this a light gathered ruffle. And it is really cute. Oftentimes when people are given advice on where to start with a ruffle, like how much longer to actually cut that rectangle than the space that they're connecting it to, the typical answer that I see is 1.5 times longer. And this is the result of that 1.5 times longer versus 2.25 longer. Now, remember when I had said that I'll let the fabric kind of determine how long my ruffle's going to be? It just depends on how much of that stuff I have. Well, this one, I actually had enough of this fabric, and actually just enough for the ruffle, but I was able to actually extend it the entire length of my quilting cotton, which was 44 inches long. And I got 2 5-inch strips out of that. So that equated to 88 inches, which is 2.75 times the base of this. And that was the final result. Now, because this ruffle is a little shorter, it flares out more, which I personally love, but maybe that's not your thing. But check this out. When I use that same measurement on this dress, but I raised that ruffle, so I basically shortened the bodice and raised the ruffle, look at how cute the dress ended up coming out. And it doesn't quite flare out as much, but it does have a whole lot of volume. And you can see the difference right here between these ruffles, right? Both of these ruffles were cut at 88 inches, but you can see how they behave differently on both dresses because of how much width we actually have here. So those are all things that you want to keep in mind. And if you're looking at it right over here, there's a really good comparison so that way you can see what each of those ruffles look like at 1.5 times, 2.25 times, and then 2.75 times. So what I didn't mention so far is that when you're thinking about how much ruffle you actually want on the bottom of your dress or wherever you're putting it, you really have to take into account how much patience you have, because there's a whole lot more gathering of this than there is of this. I personally think that a hand gathered ruffle makes for the most uniform looking ruffles, and it's something that most people can do with just a basic machine, right? But what happens when one of your 2 basting threads break mid-ruffling? That's the worst. That is the absolute worst. So the way that I actually do that is by gathering in different sections. I don't run a continuous stitch all the way around. That's too risky. That's risky business, you all. No, what I'll do is I'll run my basting stitches, 2 basting stitches across the fronts like this, and then I'll do 2 more across the back. And I like to back stitch at one end, and then when I come over here, I leave my tails longer. So that way, my stitches, when I'm gathering, like, it just doesn't gather right off the end of my dress. So I'm gonna show you how I do that right here. I really do prefer to do my gathering in sections like that. Now, when I'm gathering a whole lot of fabric for dresses for myself, because, well, I'm much bigger than this. I oftentimes will do it in 4 sections. I basically break up my basting stitches into quarters. So there will be two different sections in the front, and then there will be 2 different sections in the back, and I gather those that way. It kind of takes a lot of that guessing game out about, well, is there more gathers in the front or in the back? You can just space it out a little more that way. So I hope that you found the comparison chart here helpful when determining how long you actually want to cut your ruffle fabric to be. And I hope that you picked up a good tip to help keep you sane. If you're making dresses for Project Dress-A-Girl, make sure that you check out the Naughty Gnomes video right over here, because she's making dresses where you can very easily add on one of these ruffle hacks. And you all, I'll see you tomorrow for Friday Sews, but until then, I sincerely hope that you find joy and have a wonderful day.